Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, amma ba'd. Dear viewers, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to a new episode. An episode dedicated to our sisters, our womenfolk, and their issues, and what complications might occur with strictly our sisters, inshallah ta'ala. Joined with us in our studios, our honorable Shaykh, Shaykh Wasim. Welcome, Shaykh, once again.
May Allah bless you, Jazakallah khair.
Ameen, Jazakallah khairan. And Shaykh, issues related to women. Can a woman and can a sister go to Hajj without the husband's permission?
Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. All praise belongs to Allah. And may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon His final messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Alhamdulillah, from the beginning I may say that the performing of Hajj for the man and the woman essentially is exactly the same. There is no difference for the Hajj of a man and the Hajj of a woman. And all the rulings that we have given are applicable to both men and women. However, there are certain situations or certain rulings which are specific to women only because a man doesn't face that. Some of those issues like monthly cycle, some of those issues like traveling long distances and so on and so forth. And we do find that the Prophet ﷺ would dedicate certain times to allow the women to ask their questions. And as Muslims in the modern day now, we should always ensure that all Muslims have a platform to ask their questions. The masajid should be open for everybody, for brothers and sisters, to have access to people of knowledge so they can educate themselves in their deen. Now, inshallah, as you mentioned, this particular episode will go through a number of questions which are particular to the sisters, which inshallah ta'ala will shed some light, will attempt to shed some light on these important issues for them. Now, the first question you mentioned, whether the woman has to have the permission of her husband to perform the Hajj. Now, this kind of links to another question, whether she should or can she travel without a mahram. But what I would say before we get into that is that if the husband does not want to make the Hajj with her, i.e. that she has the financial means and the time and the health to go and perform Hajj, and maybe she can travel with her father or her brother or another mahram, then it is not for the husband to prevent her. It is not for the husband to prevent her from making Hajj. If she has the financial means, she has the ability to do so, all the conditions are fulfilled, and that, one of her male relatives can travel with her, it is not for the husband to say to her, you are not allowed to go. He's not allowed to say that to her. But rather, performing of the Hajj is something great, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has facilitated that for her. So he has no right to say that you cannot and should not go to perform the Hajj.
What is the ruling on a sister or female to go out to Hajj without the permission of her husband?
Now, if the issue has been raised to her husband, i.e. that she has fulfilled the conditions and that she has a male guardian to go with her, and he has said no, many of the ulama on this issue have said that she can go, because it is not allowed for a man to prevent a woman fulfilling one of the obligations of al-Islam. And Hajj is an obligation if the conditions are fulfilled. And nowhere in the conditions does it say that you need your husband's permission. If she has, you should discuss it with the husband, of course. If the relationship between the husband and wife is good, then obviously it is good for them to communicate. If, for example, one day the husband wakes up from sleep and he finds out his wife has just gone, she's not said anything to him, then maybe there's problems between the spouses, and that's an issue that needs to be resolved. Okay? But from the original position, as I mentioned, it is not allowed for the husband to prevent her if she fulfills the conditions. But if she does things and her own thing and the husband is doing his own thing, doesn't tell her anything, then there's probably some issues between the spouses, and I would recommend for them to go to a qualified person to maybe get some counseling, to get some advice, so that they can reconcile the issue, inshallah.
Jazakumullah khair, Shaykhna. The issue of spending on the Hajj. Should the man be responsible on spending for his wife's package, for example,
Yeah,
and
sure.
his wife's journey, or is it upon the woman to do that?
Okay. So the ulama have mentioned on this issue that it is not an obligation for the husband to pay or to pay for the Hajj of his wife. Rather, that obligation or the responsibility of gathering what is needed to make Hajj is actually upon the individual. Okay, no doubt the husband is responsible financially for his home to make sure that they have a place to live, clothing and food and things like this. Is his obligation for him to spend on his family, but it's not an obligation for him to spend and have the amount to for his wife to make the Hajj. If he does it from himself, then alhamdulillah, there's a great reward in that. And this is something that many couples that they do. They work together so they can perform this beautiful journey of Hajj together. But from a Shari'i position, it is not an obligation for him to pay the Hajj for his wife.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. And I know we've mentioned this particular issue in the past episodes, but since we're dedicating a whole episode just for our sisters, what is it that can she do if she has or she's in her monthly cycle or monthly period? What are the things that she can, what are the things that she cannot do?
Yeah. Okay. So as we mentioned previously that this happened to the wives of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam performing Hajj, like Aisha radiallahu anha. That the Prophet ﷺ said that you could enter the state of Ihram and you perform your Hajj, you do everything else that the Hajjaj that they do, except that you don't perform Tawaf. They do everything else. So let's say they enter the state of Ihram from the Miqat and then they arrive in Mecca. Obviously they're not going to make Tawaf. Then what they do is they go straight to Mina on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, which is called the day of Tarwiyah. Now the word Tarwiyah means to gather water, okay, and to prepare yourselves for the stay in Mina, which is over the few days. So they stay in Mina, and then the following day they go to Arafah, as everybody else does, okay. They make dua on the day of Arafah. Obviously they're not praying during this time. Then they go to Muzdalifah, and then they stay there in Muzdalifah. And then the following day they go through the stones, they have the sacrifice done if it is necessary. If they're performing Qiran or Tamattu', then they will trim their hair. They won't perform the Tawaf yet because they're still on their monthly cycle. When they become pure, then they can perform their Tawaf and Sa'i of Hajj. Whether that is done a few days later, whenever they purify themselves. So you find that everything else has been done, alhamdulillah, of the Hajj. They're making dua, they're going to Arafah, they're going with everybody. The only thing that they don't do is obviously perform the Tawaf and Sa'i, and that will be done when they become pure.
So what is her condition or her status if she immediately, right before Tawaf al-Ifada, she gets her menses at that particular moment, immediately before Tawaf?
Yeah.
How does she complete the Hajj?
So it doesn't differ much from the answer that I gave before, i.e. that they don't obviously perform the Tawaf now because they're on their monthly cycle.
No.
So they wait for that menses to finish, and then they perform the Tawaf and Sa'i after that.
Okay. So what happens if she enters into the state of her menses after Tawaf al-Ifada but before Tawaf al-Wada'?
Okay,
is there a difference?
Very good question, mashallah. So if the sister has performed all the rites of Hajj essentially, she entered the state of Ihram, she done everything from Arafah, standing of Arafah, she performed her Tawaf, she performed her Sa'i, she done all the stoning and so on and so forth. And then her menses starts just before they're going to perform the farewell Tawaf. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as narrated by the companions, that they said that obviously you make the last, for everybody else, the last thing that you're going to do before you leave is the farewell Tawaf, except that there was dispensation, there was a permissibility for the ha'id, for the menstrual woman, to leave it. There's no need for her to do the farewell Tawaf. So she doesn't have to perform the farewell Tawaf just before she leaves. No, alhamdulillah.
What about, Shaykhna, with all these medical, technological advancements, right? We have certain medicines that can prevent menses from occurring, or even at the bare minimum just shorten it. Instead of it being a week or 10 days, it could be for maybe a couple of days. What is the ruling on that? Is that allowed, not allowed?
So obviously with any medical issue, anything to do with anybody's health, first and foremost, I would advise for them to go to a general practitioner, a professional health advisor who's qualified to give them professional health advice, meaning that any medicine that they take is not going to harm them. This is the first port of call. And it's important to ask every specialist in their field what is appropriate for them. Okay, before I can answer something Islamic, if it's got something to do with medicine, I will say to that individual, I'm not a specialist in medicine, you will have to go to a GP, a doctor, a nurse who is qualified to give an answer concerning this particular or this type of medicine.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. May Allah raise your status. Not many people keep within their lanes, as they say, and like to talk about all subjects all the time. Jazakallah khairan. And so you were saying seek medical advice from a practitioner to maybe get the disadvantages or the advantage, or whether it would harm them or not. Right?
Yeah. So if they get the green light, for example, the doctor, the general GP or general practitioner says to them, by you taking this medicine, there are no adverse effects to you. It's not going to harm you in any way. The scholars have given fatwa to say it is permissible for a woman to take a course of tablets which will allow her to delay her menses until after the Hajj. So there's no risk of her having her menses during the days of Hajj, which then maybe she can't perform tawaf al-ifada and things like that. So she will remain in a state of purity throughout the duration of the Hajj. So when she gets the green light from the doctor, from the Islamic point of view, it's allowed for her to do that, inshallah ta'ala.
Dear viewers, we've come at a time where we need to take a break. Inshallah, stay tuned until the short break as we continue delving into women or sister issues concerning Hajj. Until then, please stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear viewers, welcome back as we continue on the topic of women's issues, fiqh of women during Hajj. Shaykhna, one question that comes to mind, what is the ruling, or is it permissible for a sister or a woman to go to Hajj without a mahram to begin with?
طيب. This is a topic which is to a lot of people quite close to the heart, because obviously performing Hajj and Umrah to go to Mecca is the dream of many Muslims. To go there to see where Islam was born, if you like, if you can say where the revelation came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to see the Kaaba, to have so much reward there. So when talking about this issue, on one side, of course, it is something very close to the heart, but also at the same time, we also have to mention the Islamic position on that. We want to do something which is pleasing to Allah tabarak wa ta'ala. So on this issue about a woman traveling for the purpose of Hajj or Umrah without a mahram. A woman traveling without a mahram, and if you don't mind, I'll just spend maybe a minute or two explaining this issue, because it's important to understand that this, within the Sharia, you find that there are certain rules, regulations, laws which are sarih, explicit, very clear. You're allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. And rulings can be extracted very, very easily, very simply. We can also extract rulings by using or understanding the evidences which in Arabic we say غير صريح, which are not explicit. You need to use some form of reasoning to extract the ruling, and this is the case with many rulings. It's not necessarily the cases you find it's black and white. Sometimes you need to use some ijtihad. It can be understood this way. So the Prophet ﷺ said in many narrations, narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, Abdullah ibn Umar, that the Prophet ﷺ said that, and these are found in both Bukhari and Muslim, that a woman who believes in Allah and the last day should not travel except without a mahram. Now that distance, the distance of what is considered to be a journey, isn't explicit. how long is a journey? What is journey for you? What is a journey for me? Might be different. For this reason, the scholars, they differed as to what is to be considered a journey, whether it's 49 miles or 82 kilometers, or whether it is what's to be considered customarily this is a journey. This is a discussion of itself. But what is clear is that the Prophet ﷺ said that a woman shouldn't travel except with a mahram. Now, if somebody's traveling from one country to the next and getting on a plane, we can consider that a journey without any doubt. Okay, so we want to remove the things which are debatable to those things which are not debatable. What's not debatable is if you're getting on a plane and you're traveling thousands of kilometers, that's a journey. And on this issue, the Prophet ﷺ in many various ahadith said that a woman shouldn't travel except with a mahram. Those who argue that the hadith says that a woman shouldn't travel the distance of a day and a night, well, I live in the States, United States of America, or I live in somewhere in Africa. I can reach Mecca within a day and a night. So the hadith is not applicable.
Yes.
But we must remember that we understand the hadith or the narrations of the Prophet ﷺ that was used and understood at his time.
No.
Otherwise, you'll find if you want to apply it to the understanding of day, all of these ahadith are null and void. There's no meaning to it. Because you can travel anywhere on earth within a day and a night. But the Prophet ﷺ doesn't speak from himself, he speaks a revelation given to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
No.
So the distances in a day and a night are judged by what you could travel at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and this is what all the scholars have agreed. So that's not kind of to do with those evidences. The vast majority of the ulama of the view, even though it is Hajj, all of the conditions, she has her health, she's a Muslimah, she's over the age of puberty, she's a woman now, she has the financial means, but she doesn't have a mahram, the wujub or the obligation of Hajj is not on her. She will not be questioned on Yawm al-Qiyamah why she did not perform Hajj. Because the conditions were not fulfilled for her because she does not have a mahram. طيب. Some of the ulama from the madhahib, for example, some of the Shafi'i scholars and some of the Maliki scholars, they state that if a woman, she goes with a group of people, she doesn't have a male guardian wali with her, a mahram I should say, but the group is safe for her, then she's permitted to make Hajj in this situation. This is the view of some of the scholars. But what seems to be more correct, and Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best, is that it is not permitted for her to travel without a mahram. She has to travel with a mahram. And this is because we know a companion, he came to the Messenger ﷺ, you may have mentioned this in a previous show actually. He said, Rasulullah, I came to give da'wah with you, to go out for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And my wife has gone for Hajj. The Prophet ﷺ said, go back with your wife and make Hajj with her. Did not permit this woman to go Hajj on her own.
No.
This companion had to go with her and to perform the Hajj. It was one of the strongest evidences to state that as long as the other ones, that a woman shouldn't make Hajj alone. If, however, she does go with a group without a mahram, she performs her Hajj, then her Hajj is sahih. The Hajj itself is valid. She fulfilled all the pillars of the Hajj, completed all the obligations, she completed a Hajj. But she would bear the responsibility of traveling without a mahram. There's a sin of traveling without a mahram, which is separate from the Hajj. And if a person says, your Hajj is not correct because you didn't take a mahram with you, is not correct. You can't say that. Because that is a separate action from the Hajj itself. The Hajj is sahih, is valid.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair, Shaykhna. What about the shaving of the head of the sisters? What is the ruling on that?
Yeah. So the men, they have the option of shaving or trimming their hair. As for the sisters, they only trim their hair when they are at the end of their Umrah or on the day of Eid when they trim their hair. And all they trim is this amount from the amount of their hair. Not in one little part, but they gather their hair all at the back of their head and then they snip it, this amount only, and that allows them to fulfill that obligation, inshallah.
Jazakallah khairan. What about, we spoke in the past about the ruling of one to make a Hajj on behalf of a relative who, for example, is either has passed or is unable due to a terminally you know, condition that he won't be recovering from.
Sure.
Can a woman do that as well, or
Yeah.
is that only specific to the man?
Okay. This in Arabic they call an-niyabatu fil hajj, and that is to perform hajj on behalf of another person. The ulama are agreed, the majority of the ulama, it is agreed, that a woman can perform, as long as she's performed it herself first. We mentioned that as a condition.
No.
She can perform hajj on behalf of another person, whether that person is a male or female. That's not a problem, inshallah ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is best.
Jazakallah khairan. What about the issue of covering the face while in the state of Hajj? Many of our sisters hold the opinion of niqab.
Yes.
What is their condition?
Yeah.
What do they have to do?
Okay. So we have specific hadith that the Prophet ﷺ told us that a woman should la tatanaqab wa la talbisu al-qufazin. She doesn't wear the niqab, nor does she wear gloves.
No.
So she leaves her hands uncovered, not wearing gloves. The wife of the Messenger ﷺ, as well as Asma binti Abi Bakr radiallahu anha, they were sisters. They mentioned that when we used to perform the pilgrimage, that when non-mahram men came close to us, they would have a scarf on the top of their head that they would pull down over their faces. This is not a niqab. A niqab is something you tie around your head that has maybe one eye or partially a small gap, or this is called a niqab and it's well known. That shouldn't be worn. But you wear a piece of cloth, one piece of cloth that you want to pull down over your face, that is possible. There is a view of some of the ulama that they say it shouldn't be touching your face, so therefore they have some, maybe it's a small cap or something that they wear here to make sure it's away from their face. Okay, this is the view of some of the ulama, and we respect that view. However, it is also the view of other ulama that it is not a problem if that piece of cloth, when it comes over your face, if it touches your face, that's not a problem. Wallahu ta'ala.
Jazakallah khairan, Shaykh. While in the state of ihram, can the sisters, you know, undo their hair and wash it and comb it, or are they also, you know, prevented from doing so?
Very good. While in a state of ihram, for the men and women actually, maybe we didn't focus on or mention this previously, it's allowed for them to shower. But you do not use any form of soap which is perfumed. So if you buy soap, you buy some shampoo which is unscented, unperfumed, then you can wash normally, you can shower normally, and then put the clothes of ihram back on, no problem, inshallah ta'ala.
Okay.
So washing and showering in the state of ihram is fine, as long as the soap that you use has no perfume.
And combing?
And combing your hair, good question, because we're not allowed to remove hair.
No.
So combing your hair naturally, that's fine, okay? And if anything that falls out, or if one hair falls out or something like that, that's not a problem, inshallah. But be careful not to overdo it in ensuring that, you know, hair may come out. You know, maybe you should avoid that. But just to brush it so it's not like all over the place, then that's fine, inshallah.
Shaykhna, jazakumullah kulla khairan. May Allah bless you and reward you. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of this episode. Dear viewers, this is the end of our episode today. If you have missed any of the episodes in the past, make sure you tune in during our next episode, as we will be summing up the whole entire season or episodes to kind of do a summary of what we've been speaking about. And as they say, let's finish the race strong. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.